nation Israel. So I'd like to call Olivier up right now. Brother, it is good to have you here.
It's good to be here.
This is the second time you've been able to visit with us.
Right.
And I know that what he's going to bring today is going to be heavy in subject matter in part. And I think you are going to be blessed as he really challenges us to think and how to pray for the people of Israel all over the world. So thank you for being here. I'm going to pray for you now and let you go. Father, thank you, Lord, once again for our brother, for bringing him here safely. And Lord, it is wonderful that we are welcoming him as a church home who loves and affirms the ministry of chosen people and Olivier Melnick. Father, bless him, bless us through what you're going to have him share with us. And again, Lord, may we be challenged and strengthened in our faith as he edifies by showing us your word today. Thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. Olivier Melnick.
Here, I have a gift for you.
Oh, thank you. I want an iPad.
Okay, am I on? Yes. Okay. Good. Well, good morning. Good morning. It's good to be back. I really consider this church a friendly, supporting church. I've been here only a couple of times, but I know your pastor going way back, and your church has clearly demonstrated your love for Israel and the Jewish people in your prayers, in your giving, in your support, and I just want to thank you for that, and thank you for the relationship that we have, that you have with our ministry. For those of you who don't know who I am Olivier Melnick, Chosen People Ministries for almost 20 years now. I am the Northwest Regional Director, reside in Seattle, and I'm also the Vice President of Berger d'Israël, which is the French branch of Chosen People Ministries, where I go to France a couple times a year to do board meetings and to do ministry locally in France. And I'd ask that you would keep that in prayer. After many, many years of prayer, we have, there's two families that we're interviewing right now that are going to very possibly join our French work, which is exciting because that doesn't happen very often. In France, it's very difficult to do ministry. And also, we are starting a Messianic congregation in Paris in the fall, and that's the result of many years of prayer, looking for the right place, the right person, and it seems like in God's timing, it's all coming together. So keep in prayer our French work. I would really appreciate that. Now, it's the wonders of technology. It works. Except when it doesn't, but so far so good. Okay, the topic for today is the world's lethal obsession with Israel, and here you are. I feel sorry for you. You're coming to church on Sunday morning, and you're going like, "What are we going to do?" What we're going to do is we're going to look at 2,000 years of history of anti-Semitism in a very short period of time. And some of you might be thinking, well, Olivier, when I come to church, this is not necessarily the topic that I want to cover for like an hour. Can we talk about something else? Well, I want to use a little bit of deductive reasoning here. If you're a follower of Yeshua, or Jesus is, Yeshua is his Hebrew name. If you're a follower of Yeshua, you read his word. If you read his word, you cannot... You have to notice that almost on every page of his word, it talks about the Jewish people. It talks about Israel in a positive way as far as God's plan for the Jewish people. Now, it talks about the discipline of Israel and what God is going to do to bring us back. But it also talks about the fact that, like we read the scripture from Jeremiah, God will never forsake Israel. So when you read his word, a Christian, you read his word, you see the importance of Israel and the Jewish people. You also see from the scriptures, from the Gospels, that our mandate as believers is to take the gospel to all people. That includes the Jewish people. We are not in by virtue of being Jewish, like Nicodemus thought in John 3. We're not. I came to the Lord 34 years ago because a Gentile, happened to be my wife now for 34 years, a Gentile was bold enough to tell me about Jesus, which, for Jewish people was not interested. But it worked. She had patience, and she led me to the Lord, to my Messiah, through the simple mission of the gospel. So we have a mandate as believers. So we read our Bible. We read that God is got Israel and the Jewish people in the palm of his hand and for his entire program. We know that God is going to want to have us share the gospel with the lost, Jews and non-Jews. So now we're faced with a challenge. How do we do it with Jewish people? How do we share with Jewish people? Why do we share? Because we have to, because this is what God wants us to do. But how do we do it? People get intimidated. People go like, well, I don't know Jewish people, or I don't know what to say, or so much has been done against them in the name of Christianity. So I think the best thing to do, one of the best things to do, is to educate ourselves and find out what has happened to the Jewish people, to my people, over the last 2,000 years. Many times in the name of Christianity, so that you can be equipped and you can know when you go into a conversation with Jewish people exactly what to expect as far as their misconception, their expectation, and then you can better share the gospel. So that's what I want to talk about this morning, and I think that's the logical way to look at it, and this is what we're going to do in the first hour. So, I'm going back. So maybe I should go this way. What do you think? Yeah, this is better. So the world seems to have an obsession with Israel and the Jewish people. Jewish history can be studied in light of thousands of years of anti-Jewish sentiment, later known as anti-Semitism. By the way, I have this entire PowerPoint and the next hour on a PDF format. If you don't take notes, you can listen better. And I promise you that if you put on the clipboard that we're going to start passing, did you start? She's better than, see, thank you. If you put notes, if you put your name and your email and put notes, I'll send you the PDF notes for this and the next hour. And since I'm here on the clipboard, there's other options of checking box if you want to receive my daily devotion. If you want to receive articles that I write on the topic, check those boxes. If you've already checked the box in my previous visit, don't do it again. But if you want the notes, just put your name, write notes, and write, I already get the other stuff, so I won't put you. Otherwise, you'll get it twice, and you know how irritating that can be. Okay, we all know that. So let's continue, because I want to talk about the baggage here. That's very important. Christians carry baggage when they enter into any kind of dialogue or relationship with a Jewish person. That is the first thing and one of the most important things you need to remember. You all carry Christian, non-Jewish Christian, Gentile Christian, carry baggage. The Jewish people know what that baggage is, but too often Christians do not. And yet we must know what Jewish people think of Christianity if we seek genuine dialogue. So that baggage, I want to tell you about it, looks like this. You need to know what is in that suitcase. When you get into a Jewish conversation, when you get into a relationship with a Jewish person, you don't know it, but you walk in that conversation as a Christian, as a Gentile Christian, you put down two large suitcases that look like this. You don't even know it, but your Jewish friend looks at all this and he knows. He knows about the Crusades, the Inquisition, the pogroms, Martin Luther, the Holocaust, the Black Plague, and I only have room for just a few stickers on that suitcase. I could make 2 or 3 suitcases like this. So it's very important that we know what is in that baggage. Some reasons to study anti-Semitism. It focuses on the destruction of the people of the book, the Jewish people. So we need to know about it. Anti-Semitism is strongly connected to replacement theology. People ask me all the time, is replacement theology anti-Semitism, or is anti-Semitism leading to replacement theology? And my answer is always the same: yes. Both ways. They're connected. That's the best way to look at it. Anti-Semitism is an inseparable part of the fabric of Jewish history. It must be studied if we want to understand the Jewish people. You cannot understand the Jewish people unless you study their history punctuated by acts of anti-Semitism through the last 2,000 plus years. Anti-Semitism can be used in outreach to Jewish people. I've had many occasions as a Jew talking about Yeshua, Jesus, to another Jewish person, to tell them, listen, you and I don't agree on who the Bible says the Messiah is. I believe it's Jesus. He's going to come back for his people. You believe Messiah hasn't come yet. But you're Jewish and I'm Jewish. That's me talking to a Jewish person. And we can agree that to the anti-Semite, we're both Jewish. They don't care if I believe in Jesus or Santa Claus. I'm a Jew. I'm a nuisance. I need to be eliminated. I need to be out of the picture. You and I are the same. So when it comes to anti-Semitism, I can use it as a bridge builder with my Jewish people. You can too. As a Gentile Christian, you take a different route, but you cross the same bridge. That route is, as a Bible-believing Christian, as a Bible-believing Gentile Christian, I cannot condone anything that has been done against Israel and the Jewish people in the name of Christianity. So you tell your friend, those things that we saw in that suitcase, all those bad events in the history of the Jewish people, you tell them that is not something that a true Bible-believing Christian who abides in the Lord, who reads the Scriptures, would agree on. And that's your way in. That's your door, your entrance into the conversation. A definition of anti-Semitism, there are many, but on this one I want you to maybe keep your eyes on the word irrational, because that is what I want to emphasize today. In the first and second hour, really, I want to emphasize the word irrational, because now we're at a level of anti-Semitism today in the world that, not just in Israel and the Middle East, but in the world, that is really irrational. Anti-Semitism is the irrational hatred of the Jewish people, characterized by destructive thoughts, words, and or actions against them. That is one of many definitions. Anti-Semitism is not biblical. Well, you're going, well, duh, Olivier, we know that. Well, I know. Good. I'm glad you know that, but it's good to establish our foundation. Genesis 12, 1 through 3 is one of our foundational verse. God has it in his divine decree to choose the Jewish people for a special purpose. He formulates in that passage his relationship with the Jewish people and the nations, meaning the rest of the world, that will be ratifying that covenant with Abraham. So that scripture is, I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. Now, we have seen many examples of God blessing those who bless the Jews and cursing those who curse the Jews. I can think of biblical examples of the Pharaoh who enslaved the Jewish people, curse for a curse when he wanted to kill the firstborn. We think of Haman in the book of Esther, who built gallows for Mordecai. He ended up being hanging on the gallows himself. Think of many examples, even post-biblical examples. One that comes to mind that I always like to remember is Spain. Spain, for hundreds of years, was known as the Golden Age of Spain until about year 1492, where Queen Isabella decided to kick the Jews out of Spain, and secular historians believe, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that 1492, outside of the fact that Columbus sailed the ocean blue, I had to say it because it rhymes. I was like, I had to say it. But aside from that fact, 1492 was the year when it was the beginning of the decline of the Spanish Empire. They can't really explain it. We can. Genesis 12:3. I will bless those who bless you. I'll curse him who curses you. So sometimes it's right away, and sometimes it's a blessing, a curse for a curse. Sometimes it takes time, and it might not be the same curse. But God has a good memory, and God is faithful, and God is just. Amen. So now, talking about it being not biblical, a true Christian, and I have talked to Christians today, in our day and age, and say, well, Israel really is the problem. I'm not anti-Semitic, but Israel is the problem. And, if Israel would change their policies, there would be peace in the Middle East. No, absolutely not. If Israel would put down their, I'm quoting Netanyahu, if Israel would put down their weapons today, there would be no more Israel tomorrow. If the Palestinians would put down their weapons today, there would be peace in the Middle East. So that's the difference. A genuine follower of Yeshua cannot hate the Jews. Psalm 83, 3 through 5. They make shrewd plans against your people, that's Israel, and conspire together against your treasured ones. They have said, come and let us wipe them out as a nation, that the name of Israel be remembered no more. That verse is actually very contemporary. You think about it. Okay, it's in Psalm 83, but it talks about what's happening today. For they have conspired together with one mind, and here is the clincher. Against you they make a covenant. Those who hate Israel, those who think Israel is the problem, they make a covenant against the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So you cannot be a believer. You cannot claim to love God, to love the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to love Yeshua, Jesus, who's God in the flesh, if you don't love Israel. Many people don't make that connection. There's a disconnect even within the church today. But that's critical. So, theological anti-Judaism paves the way for later anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism did not come like one night, one morning, somebody didn't wake up and say, okay, you know what, we're going to start hating the Jews. Let's just invent anti-Semitism. It didn't happen in a vacuum. It took 2,000 years, as we are seeing this morning, 2,000 years over history here. But as a result, what started as a result of allegorical interpretation of the Bible, the church fathers started to paint a negative picture of the Jewish people. And so they took the Bible and they look at some verses saying, well, this could mean this could mean that. I'm a literalist. There is room for figures of speech in the Bible, style and figures of speech. But the first way to look at Scripture is to look at it literally. If it says what it says, it means what it means, it's probably what God wanted to tell us, historically or for today. And then we can look at figures of speech. But too many people, and starting with some of the church fathers, looked at Scripture allegorically, saying, well, this means this for them, but this means that for us. And then, it could be a third meaning and a fourth meaning. And, if you had bad pizza last night, maybe a fifth meaning, You feel differently. And so that's very dangerous. I want to show you some of what a church father said, and I'll go chronologically in just a few. Now, when I talk about the church fathers, much of what they have said and done and established for the body of Messiah over the centuries is good. There's a lot of good that came from the church fathers, but often they also misinterpreted Scripture, and that's how this anti-Semitism got started. It wasn't a heart of man to start with, because anti-Semitism comes from Satan, who wants to put it in the heart of man to fight his battle against the Jews, God's people, the apple of God's eye. So he's using people throughout history, but so he's used people even within the church. So Ignatius of Antioch said, for if we're still practicing Judaism, we admit that we have not received God's favor. It is wrong to talk about Jesus Christ and live like Jews, for Christianity did not believe in Judaism, but Judaism and Christianity. It's actually the other way around. And a man who said it very well is Benjamin Disraeli. He said, Christianity is biblical Judaism fulfilled. I agree with that. I believe it. Now, he was really upset about what was going on in this day and age. I couldn't find one happy picture of him. So, he probably was very upset about the way Israel was being treated. That's the nicest, the happiest picture of him that I can find, and it's not looking good. So, but he was a believer, by the way. He was an early Jewish believer, British Prime Minister. I quote him very often. Okay, here's another church father, Origen of Alexandria. We may thus assert in utter confidence that the Jews will not return to their earlier situation, for they have committed the most abominable of crimes in forming the conspiracy against the Savior of the human race. Hence, the city where Jesus suffered was necessarily destroyed. The Jewish nation was driven from its country, and another people was called by God to the blessed election. There you have it, one of the earliest teaching of replacement theology. The church has replaced Israel. The church is now the elected people of God. If this is true, my friends, then God is a liar. Because God made a covenant with Abraham, unconditional, eternal covenant. Eternal means until a certain time. No, it means forever. So if God made an eternal covenant with Abraham and the Jewish people, and he made more than one actually, he made several out of the 8 covenants of the Bible, only with Israel, then he's a covenant maker. But if it's switched to another people, for instance, the church as a whole, then he's a covenant breaker. And if God is a covenant breaker, it means he's a liar. And if he's a liar, then maybe what he promised you that pertains to your own salvation, maybe is not true. Maybe you're not saved. Of course you are, if you put your trust in the death and resurrection of Yeshua for your sins. That's not going to change. That's the only way to God for Jews and Gentiles. And because God doesn't change, that also doesn't change. So the church has not replaced Israel. John Chrysostom. Now, all these church fathers are big names in the Hall of Fame of church history. Big names. And again, they've contributed a lot of good things. Yet, the about the Jewish people, not the nicest thing. John Chrysostom, who's still revered, especially in the Catholic Church and even a lot in the evangelical circles, said this about the Jewish people. The synagogue is worse than a brothel. It is the den of scoundrels and the repair of wild beasts, the temple of demons devoted to idolatrous cults, the refuge of brigands and debauchees, and the cavern of devils. It is a criminal assembly of Jews, a place of meeting for the assassins of Christ, a house worse than a drinking shop, a den of thieves, a house of ill fame, a dwelling of iniquity, the refuge of devils, a gulf and abyss of perdition. I would say the same things about their souls. As for me, I hate the synagogue. I hate the Jews for the same reason. Men who are lustful, rapacious, greedy, perfidious bandits, inveterate murderers, destroyers, men possessed by the devil. They have surpassed the ferocity of wild beasts, for they murder their offspring and immolate them to the devil. I really wish you would tell us how you felt. Because this could be taken more than one way. It's crazy. And this is still in the writings of John Chrysostom, who's apparently a Christian. Now, this taught from the pulpit in his days, in the 3rd and 4th century A.D., to a bunch of uneducated people who don't know better. They go to church, they listen to their bishops and their preachers, and they go like, if they know, they must know. If they say this, they must know, because they're educated, they're our leaders. So this is how it got started, where all these people took an allegorical approach, and then they twisted Scripture and added our own human depravity, because it's we have hate within us. Love takes work. Hate comes naturally for all of us. Augustine, we've got to keep moving because you're not listening fast enough. The Jews held him. The Jews insulted him. The Jews bound him. They can crown him with thorns. Dishonored him by spitting upon him. They scourged him. They heaped abuses upon him. They hung him upon a tree. They pierced him with a lance. Because of the divine malediction they have called upon themselves, they are destined to be slaves. Furthermore, in Confessions, he wrote, the true image of the Hebrew is Judas Iscariot, who sells the Lord for silver. The Jew can never understand the Scriptures and forever will bear the guilt for the death of Jesus. So, not me in my lifetime, praise God, but many, many, many Jewish people have been accused throughout history, to this day, of being Christ killers. So how do you tell somebody, you Christ killer, would you like to come to church with me on Sunday? How do you invite somebody? You got to be careful what you say. First of all, it's, we didn't kill Christ. Well, actually we did. You know who did it? I did it, but you joined with me. You know why? Because he died for all of us. It says in John 10 that he gave his own life so he could take it back. We didn't kill him. He gave his own life. Jerome, if you call it a brothel, a den of vice, the devil's refuge, Satan's fortress, a place to deprave the soul, an abyss of every conceivable disaster, or whatever you will, you are still saying less than it deserves. That's just a few of the church fathers. You get the picture. So what happens is at the end of that era, then in the beginning of the Middle Ages, I roughly put the Middle Ages at 500 to 1500. I mean, you could, fine-tune the exact time, but that's easier that way. You've got a couple of codes that start to be written. One called the Theodosian Code, the other one the Justinian Code, and they add all kinds of laws to protect the Christians and to forbid the Jews from doing several things, like Jews could no longer own Christian slave, or their rights were narrowed, they were barred from public functions, barred from the practice of law, Jews were prevented from testifying against a Christian. All those things start to happen. And by the way, the Nuremberg laws of the 1930s were modeled after those laws that were established by the early church fathers. The Nuremberg laws are the laws that the Nazi Party established in 1933-35 to start ostracizing the Jewish people, of course, culminating in the Holocaust and the death of 6 million. So, forced baptism and conversions. So we start seeing forced baptism, Christian baptism, and conversions. Steadfast Jews prepared to fight until death rather than convert. Or you have three kinds of Jews: lukewarm Jews ready to take advantage of Christians, and what we call crypto Jews, pretending to be Christians but still Jews at home, also known as Moranos and or conversos. And actually, later on during the Inquisition, those Jews who had pretended to convert to Christianity to save their life would keep home would keep a home, a Jewish home inside their home and pretend to be Christians, then there would be people going on roofs of homes and look at all from the side of the Inquisition, looking to see if they would see any smoke coming out of those homes on Shabbat, on the weekend. Because if there was no smoke, there was no cooking, or there was no burning of fire, it means that they were still Jewish inside the home. So that's how they would find them, to those who said were Christians and they were not. So it was very devious. But there were, some did it to save their life. Some became believers, but not that many, because the brand of Christianity that was forced upon my people back in those days was not the Christianity that we see in the Bible. So, around the 1100, messianic prophecies get a facelift. Rabbi Rashi, a French rabbi who was in the prime of his years during the First Crusade, reworked the meaning of the messianic prophecies of the Old Testament, all to not point to a Messiah, but to point to meaning Israel, which is very important. To this day, Rashi is kind of like the Charles Ryrie of the Jewish Bible. You've got the Rashi notes, if you know what I mean, like the Ryrie Bible. You've got the Rashi notes. Whenever you study the Old Testament, you study with Rashi commentary. To this day, any Jewish person who's a serious student of the Bible will study with the notes by Rabbi Rashi, a French rabbi. And he changed forever the meaning of all those messianic prophecies. They don't say Jesus in the Old Testament, but they point to the person of Jesus, Yeshua. The place of his birth, the time of his birth, the method, and everything, they all apparently point to Israel, not the Messiah. Of course, it's not true, but that's what Jewish people believe today. So we have to be aware of that. Now, the First Crusade, the official purpose of the crusade was to push the Muslim infidels out of the Holy Land. It kind of took a left turn. Some crusaders in France were quoted saying, "We desire to combat the enemies of God in the East, but we have under our eyes the Jews, a race more inimical to God than all the others. We're doing this all backwards." So crusaders started going through Europe and decided, hey, you know what? We can practice on the Jewish people in Europe. And they would go and kill Jewish people in villages. It's around that time that, when you talk to Jewish people, they say, well, if your mother is Jewish, you're Jewish. How does that come up? Because in the Bible, it's not that way. It's through the parents or through the father. So when was the switch? It's around that time that the switch took place. Because there were so many Jewish people, Jewish women raped by unknown people. And the fathers were killed, and the women were raped, and then they would have babies. So the rabbis back in those days said, we have to do something to preserve the Jewish people, or we're going to disappear. So they decided, we don't know who the fathers are. They kill the Jewish fathers, they rape the women, and they have babies. So they established, the rabbis established this, they make the switch and say, if the mother is Jewish, then flesh of our flesh, the baby is going to be Jewish. So that's from this day on. If you talk to Orthodox Jews, even conservative Jews, if your mother is Jewish, you're Jewish. But really, it's either parent, you have Jewish blood, end of story. But that's when it started, by fear of losing the Jewish people. Now, during the Crusades, Crusaders marched through France, and a motto was born: "Kill a Jew, save your soul." And tell me how Christian is that? Kill a Jew, save your soul. Not only that, but in 1099, they arrived in the Holy Land in Israel and gathered 1,000 Jewish people inside the great synagogue of Jerusalem and set it ablaze as they marched around it, singing, "Christ, we adore thee. Thee are our light, our direction, our love." It's in history books. Now, you don't hear this about the Crusades. That's one thing that the Muslims and the Jews have in common, is how much we suffered through the Crusades at the hands of Christians. Money lending. How many of you, and you don't have to show your hand, but you can if you want, how many of you have heard that Jews are greedy? And we like money? Yeah, I see a couple of hands. A couple of you are being honest, okay? Well, in my own adopted family, on my wife's side, even one of somebody in the family said that to me. I had to correct that person a couple of times. Yeah, we're greedy. We like money. Well, who doesn't like money? I mean, seriously. You can be greedy and be Jewish. You would happen to be greedy and happen to be Jewish, but you would not be greedy because you're Jewish. But this is where it comes from. In the Middle Ages, Christians were allowed to borrow money only from Jews. So they would go to Jewish people, and the kings of Europe started taxing the Jewish money lenders on their profit. A Jewish person would say, I'll give you $10. They were not dollars back then, but, we're contextualizing. I'll give you $10 and come back next month, give me $10.50 or $11. So they would do that. And then the kings were like, wow, those guys are making money, we're going to tax them. So they would tax the Jews. I'll tax them $1.50. But the problem is that we only got $1 profit and we're taxed $1.50. So now we have to make it $2, so $12. So the Jewish community raised their interest rate to make a living because the kings of Europe, who did not need that money, taxed them over and over and over, so it kept going up. So the myth of the greedy Jew was born at that time. You need to know that. Because when you know that, and you talk to your Jewish friends, they see that you're serious about knowing exactly where all those myths and misconception came from. And then you look at them as a regular human being, not necessarily with all the stigma attached to them that they think that all Christians are anti-Semitic. Jewish people by default will think that all Christians, which by the way means all Gentiles, are anti-Semitic. So you make friends with Jewish people, it might take time. But to a Jewish person, Billy Graham, the Pope, Hitler, all Christians. Because they're not Jewish, they're Gentiles, so they must be Christians. That's the way they think. My people think that if you're not Jewish, you're a Christian. So you also need to know that when you go into a conversation. Ritual murder, libel, blood accusation. Those are all the names for the same thing. First record was in 1141 in England, where through the testimony of one monk, basically this man was accused of killing a Jewish child to take his blood to make unleavened bread for Passover. The craziness about this is that Jewish people are extra careful to take all the blood out of the meat when they kosherize the meat because they're not supposed to consume any of the blood. So for Jewish people to do all that and then turn around and kill a Christian child to receive the blood, to use it in Passover matzah, is beyond ridiculous. But there are pictures, middle-age bas-relief sculpture on cathedrals and paintings and book illustrations galore showing that. People just pass them in you might have even seen some of those in museums and not even know what it is. That's what it's talking about here. It reemerged in Poland in late 18th century, 19th century in France, Germany, and Russia, in New York in 1928. It's also in Nazi propaganda during World War II, even in Birmingham, Alabama in 1962, and I got all those more in details in my notes, but just for today, I'm just going to give you those little points here. So anti-Semites are still propagating it around the world, especially in the Middle East. Fourth Lateran Council of 1215. Jews were now forced to wear a badge on their garment. There's a picture of this round badge known as the rouelle in French, the round yellow circle. It became later the yellow star of the Holocaust, as you probably remember that one. The reason was given was the prevention of sexual relation between Jews and Christian, but it was really to further ostracize the Jewish people and mark them on the byways of Europe. It's also at that time in Jewish history that Jewish people started to be described as stinky, curly hair, big nose, dark skin. So I'm thinking, if this is true of us, if we have a stench, if we have a big nose, if we have dark skin and dark curly hair, why do we need a garment badge to be recognized? You should be able to see us from a distance, smell us from a distance. Host desecration, 1215, around the same time, part of the Fourth Lateran Council. Pope Innocent III, you gotta love the name, made the doctrine of transubstantiation an official part of the Catholic Church. Doctrine of transubstantiation is when Catholics believe that when they take the Eucharist, the cup and the bread, it becomes the body of Messiah and it becomes the blood of Messiah. So in essence, when you do communion in the Catholic Church, you become a 1-minute cannibal. Don't get me. Anyway, it's not a good way of saying it, but it's, it doesn't become the body. It's a symbol. It's just a symbol, according to what Jesus did in the upper room in the Passover. The reason given by Christians to explain why Jews would desecrate communion wafers was that as they pierced them, the blood of Yeshua would start pouring, and that they were able to reenact the crucifixion for which they were originally guilty. And this was believed by the masses. And because of all these reasons, you get uneducated masses who hear those things, they just go after the Jews. We have to protect our villages. We have to protect our communities. So more laws are being passed. And then some people would find out who's Jewish, who's not, and they would just go in the villages and kill them and push them aside. And they're pushed out of countries and all throughout the Middle Ages. So as a result here of host desecration, about 100,000 Jews from over 140 different European communities were massacred. And, again, like I mentioned John 10 earlier, that, the deicide accusation, the accusation of killing God, thus completely ignoring the Bible that claimed that Yeshua gave his own life so that he could take it back, and that if anybody was guilty of his death, it was the world, and the whole world, and certainly not the Jews, as we can certainly read in John 10, 17, and 18. Which is right there on the screen. For this reason, the Father loves me, because I laid down my life so that I may take it again. No one has taken it away from me, but I laid down on my own initiative. I have authority to lay it down. I have authority to take it up again. This commandment I received from my Father. Poisoning the wells of Europe. It keeps going. And the Black Death. Jews were accused of the Black Death. Why? Well, because we must have done it. That's the logic back then. Because very few Jews died of the Black Death. Millions of people died in Europe of the Black Plague, the Black Death. But not that many Jewish people. So they must be behind it. They were accused, actually, of making this mix with a Catholic, the host, the bread, and then some urine and some rat, parts of rats and things really weird in history books back then, and that is what they put in the wells of Europe so that everybody would die of the Black Plague. And in the Jews, very few died. Why is that? Well, in Rabbinic Judaism, when you keep kosher, you have to stay away from certain food that are biblical, that the Jewish people, biblical kosher is no pork, no shellfish. And back in those days, they didn't have any refrigerators, so it was a good thing to stay away from pork back in those days, because you could get really sick with it. Okay? And then Jewish people are supposed to wash their hands before. It's a ritual washing of the hands. If you go to Israel, in every restaurant you see a little chain with a little double-handle cup when you pour water, and you pour water on your hands, and you wash your hands when you recite a prayer. Every single meal. And that goes back to even before that time. So because of ritual hygiene, less Jewish people died, accused of the Black Death. The Spanish Inquisition. Well, I've already told you a little bit about it. 1492, 300,000 Jews of Spain had to leave within 6 months and leave all their belongings behind. So we'll keep going here, because we got a couple more things to do. Here is a summary of the Middle Ages. By the end of the 15th century, the Jew has become an undesirable agent of Satan. The terms Jewish and diabolical were now synonymous. The Jews, of course, the symbol of the cross, so dear to Christians, has become such an offense and became known as the symbol of disaster. Medieval anti-Semitism left a mark that the 21st century is still trying to erase. So now we move into a different era, and we talk a little bit about another important figure of Christianity, Martin Luther, which, by the way, this year is the 500th anniversary of his nailing his 95 Thesis on the Church of Wittenberg. Pray for me. I am invited to speak in Germany for a celebration of Luther's 500th anniversary in November. I'm invited to speak, and my topic is going to be Luther and the Jews. So I'm going, but I'm a little nervous, but I can't say no to that. So it's going to have to end well. So I'm going to work on a message that ends well, because I want to come back home. In 1517, Martin Luther started the Reformation after nailing his thesis on Wittenberg. His translation of the Bible in German made it more accessible and had a tremendous impact. This was huge. All of a sudden, no more Latin Bible. I mean, continue, but now we have it in vernacular, and in German, and people can just read the Bible for themselves. That was huge. That's what he wanted to do, a direct access to God. No pope, no priest, no bishop in the middle. Originally, he tried to attract the Jews to the new faith, and he felt that he stripped of popes and bishops and priests, Christianity had a lot to offer to all, including Jewish people, which is true. In 1523, he wrote a very meaning loving, philo-Semitic, it's the opposite of anti-Semitic, philo-Semitic pamphlet, Jesus, Messiah, was born a Jew. You read that sermon, you find it on the internet, you read that sermon, very short, you go like, wow, it sounds like a Messianic Jewish believer like myself would preach today. It's incredibly loving of the Jewish people. It's wonderful. And that's something we need to know about it. And something that maybe you need to tell your Jewish friends, because your Jewish friends will say, oh yeah, Martin Luther, we know. I say, yeah, but did you know that at the beginning of his life, he was actually very friendly to the Jewish people. So he was not born that way. It was a process that, unfortunately, 20 years later, he wrote on the Jews and their lies, and he used language that has, it's been very, very strong language that, at the very least, equal the past and future diatribes against the Jewish people. Some of what he said: what shall we Christians do with this rejected and condemned people, the Jews? Since they live among us, we dare not tolerate their conduct, now that we are aware of their lying and reviling and blaspheming. First, to set fire to their synagogues or schools, and to bury and cover with dirt whatever will not burn, so that God might see that we are Christians and do not condone or knowingly tolerate such public lying, cursing, and blaspheming of his Son and of his Christians. Second, I advise that their houses be also razed and destroyed. Third, I advise that all their prayer books and Talmudic writings be taken from them. Fourth, I advise that their rabbis be forbidden to teach on pain of loss of life and limb. For as we've heard, God's anger with them is so intense that gentle mercy will only tend to make them worse and worse, while sharp mercy will reform them but little. Therefore, in any case, away with them. Many scholars and historians believe that Luther's view of the Jews had a profound effect on Germans and had serious influence on Hitler's ideology in implementing the final solution to the Jewish question. And actually, Hitler quotes in Mein Kampf that he continued what Luther started. So now, did Luther want to have all the Jews dead, killed, eliminated? No, probably not. But there was this passionate hatred in his sermons and in his book that, taken to a next level, culminated in the Holocaust. The Pale of Settlement. Okay, we're making good progress here. The Pale of Settlement, because we're in the 1800s, so we're doing 2,000 years, and we started at 1,800 years ago. So I'll keep going. Pale of Settlement in the pogroms. A pale is a geographical boundary where Jewish people could live within the Russian Empire. It was like a large ghetto, about 1 million square miles. The shtetl, or the little village of Fiddler on the Roof, is an example of what kind of life was within the Pale. That's where my great-grandparents came from, the shtetl, because they escaped the pogroms, which is the next line on your PowerPoint here. Pogroms, which is Russian for devastation. There were government-sponsored riots against the Jewish people. Many pogroms took place all throughout Eastern Europe. The first one on record was in Odessa, 1821. They started after the establishment of the Pale, and often as a result of the Jews' refusal to convert to Eastern Christian Orthodoxy. So that's, we're looking at the late 1800s. And then, now, I teach a class on this, and this is one slide here on the Holocaust, but I could spend 10 hours on this. But we can't today. We only have 6 hours left. So, the Holocaust. Now, Judaism is no longer a theological problem. It has now become an ethnic one. So, anti-Semitism, theological anti-Judaism became anti-Semitism, and now it's becoming racial, ethnic anti-Semitism. And the Holocaust was a systematic, willful attempt at exterminating all of European Jewry. What is the difference between the Holocaust and all the other genocides in the history of mankind? Very good question. The difference is that any genocide in the history of mankind outside of the Holocaust, the perpetrator always gave a chance for the victims to leave the country and become political refugees somewhere else, or just go and move to a different country. Just Get out of here. We don't like you. We don't want you here. We don't agree with you. Get out, or we're going to kill you. So they get out. In the case of the Holocaust, it is a genocide, but this is the only time where the perpetrators would actually go out of their way, spend so many resources to go get the Jews back and bring them back, to put them on a train, take them to the camp. That's what happened to my grandfather, who was taken to Auschwitz. And died there. So that's the only genocide of its type that actually the perpetrators would go out of their way to bring the Jewish people back. So the Holocaust started in the 1933-38 legislation, the Nuremberg laws, based on the early Christian laws that we talked about earlier. Then criminalization of Jewishness, 38 to 1939, Kristallnacht, when in Germany, in one night on the November 9th through 10th, 1938, basically, many synagogues were destroyed and Jewish businesses were destroyed, and some boycotts happened all in one night, and then it took about a year after that. And then isolation, 1939, 1941. Jewish people are put into ghettos, the Lodz ghetto, the Warsaw ghetto, and then 1941-45, the death camps. The Holocaust was the culmination of 2,000 years of anti-Semitism. And you have it right there, the Holocaust in one slide. Now, let's move into the postmodern era, and we'll finish with that. Now, anti-Semitism has morphed into anti-Zionism and anti-Israelism, and that will be the topic of our second hour. We'll talk about what's happening today, especially. We'll focus on campus life in America. You're going to be surprised with what you see. So you don't want to miss that. The boundaries, the postmodern era, the new anti-Semitism has a lot in common with the historical anti-Semitism, which we've seen up to now. As far as the goal is concerned, it was, is, and always will be the complete destruction of the Jewish people just because they are Jewish. And yet, we read in the Bible in Jeremiah 31, 35 through 37, that God will never forsake Israel. Amen? Doesn't mean Jewish people are not going to suffer, but God is not going to let it completely be eradicated. Never. The boundaries are different. The boundaries of the old anti-Semitism were European for the most part. Now the cancer has metastasized. Now it's the whole planet, everywhere. Everywhere, because of the internet, because of the social network. You can be Jewish in Ohio and do something, or you can be doing something in Israel, and then if you're Jewish in Ohio, you get a swastika on your garage door because they're mad about what's happening in Israel against the Palestinians. That's how it's connected now by proxy, by osmosis, whatever you want. It's like global now. The source is different. Let me skip this. Let me see what I have next here because we only have 2 minutes left. I'm going to talk about this in the second hour. It's an interesting choice of word that came out. The second battle. It is a battle, It is a spiritual battle, isn't it? And in this new, what I want you to understand in the last couple of slides we have here is that what's happening today, and we're down to today now, is we have the left, leftism and secular anti-Israelism. We have radical Islam. What's happening today? Remember at the beginning I gave you the definition. I said anti-Semitism is irrational. It is so irrational. It has become so irrational that you have leftists and radical Muslims who have zero in common in their ideologies. The ideology of a leftist or radical left or a liberal and the ideology of a radical Muslim are complete opposite on the spectrum. You would agree, right? Except when it comes to one thing, the hatred of Israel. Then they work together. That is irrational. Because take that away, there's nothing in common. They fight each other. They kill each other. Well, mostly the one side kills the other side. Okay? But when it comes to Israel, you've got liberals and radical left supporting an ideology that is an ideology of hate and hatred and murder simply because they also hate Israel. And it has nothing to do with giving the Palestinians back their land, their occupied country. It has only one thing to do. It's to get rid of the Jews, okay? Because there's no foundation for the Palestinian going back to their land. So I'm going to finish with those 2 slides here, and we'll be on time by 1 minute. Are we good? Okay. We must defeat anti-Semitism before it defeats all of us. We must win our enemies with love before they win us by force. Now, we got to be careful with this statement, because when I say this, I see a lot of, the terrorist attacks in the world. We see a lot of them recently in France and in England, but all over the world. And the one thing I'm not encouraging you to do is what we're seeing out of Europe right now, is that they fight terrorism with hashtags and flowers in concerts. That's not what I'm saying, okay? Because that's not going to work. That's called appeasement, and it's Churchill who said that appeasement is like feeding a crocodile and hoping the crocodile that you'll be the last one that a crocodile will eat. Okay, that's appeasement. That's what it is. Why love instead of hate? Because we as believers, according to Matthew 5:46, we're told that we must love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us. That's what makes us different. Now, this is to be done from our perspective, a believer's perspective, but it also has to be done in relation to common sense. We don't want to just love everybody and be blind to what's happening. It's just, oh, I'm a Christian, I love you anyway, and then be killed or let things happen. That's why we have to make a difference. But we have to demonstrate the Christian love because that's the only way that it's going to really work. But on a foundation of justice, biblical justice. Anti-Semitism is a monster that we can defeat if we work together. Our tendency would, of course, be to retract in our personal cocoons of family, work, or religion and believe the opposite. We often feel helpless as one person in a sea of antagonists. What can we do? What can one do? And aren't we better off not making waves and just getting along? A lot of people think that. Well, Irish statesman and philosopher Edmund Burke is credited for having said this: all that is necessary for the forces of evil to win in the world is for enough good men to do nothing. So please educate yourself, educate others. We've done some of that this morning. Remember, I give you all the notes so you can go back to it. Expose the lies. Stand up, speak out against the liars. I'll talk more about this in the second hours. And when it comes out, get this great book next month that is not out yet, but coming out soon. And thank you very much for listening. I know it was a lot of information. Again, get the notes. Email me if you want me to expand on some things or give you some quotes for where I got this information. Make sure you sign for my blog, because a lot of that information keeps coming on a weekly basis or so. Let me pray. Lord, thank you for this opportunity to share with my brothers and sisters here. Lord, I understand this is a lot of information, but you want us to be aware of what's going on against your people, the Jewish people, so we can better understand them, so we can better relate to them, and as a result, share the love of Messiah and see more of them come to a saving knowledge of Yeshua and be in eternity with us and with you. So thank you, Lord, for that, and bless the rest of this day. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen.